Hello and welcome. Welcome to our Mayoral Community Forum. The Mayoral Community Forum is set to ensure that information necessary for our communities is shared appropriately. The Mayoral Community Forum is set to ensure that information necessary for our community is shared appropriately. Okay. We are getting a little bit of feedback, so let's make sure everyone has their mics on mute. Very well, thank you so much. So it is my honor to host this Mayoral Community Forum. The Community Forum is entitled Trust, Tackling the World's Most Complex Societal Issue. This word of trust has plagued us for many years. One of the things that is so important to understand about trust is a very individualistic thing. The dictionary term of trust is actually a firm belief in the reliability, the truth, the ability, the strength of someone or something, relations to have, be built on. So trust essentially is that confidence, that belief, that faith, that freedom of suspicion. Trust is the sureness and the certainty that we would have in a particular arrangement, whereby a person holds property or is also of good and moral benefits. Trust is a very individual thing. So this is why the month of June, we are addressing this term called trust. It gives me great honor today to bring to you a dynamic co-host on this program, Dr. Keith Marshall. Dr. Keith Marshall has written his personal story, and he will share with you this evening his journey, and you're in for a treat. Dr. Marshall's story is a bibliography from fear to freedom, from dumpsters to doctor. After 23 years of getting high on drugs, self-medicating, being homeless, having to live behind the dumpster, being shot in the head, being stabbed multiple times and near death. The situations in Dr. Marshall's life are just so traumatic that many of us would crumble with just any one of those happening to us, let alone having all of them happen in one body. Dr. Marshall was able to break free from his addictions. He was able to go to school, and it took him 9 years to earn his degree. His doctoral degree is in clinical psychology. He has had 3 professional addiction certifications. And of all of his addictions and recovery facilities, he treasures his Dedicato Treatment Center the best. Dr. Marshall has a personal journey, and it is our honor to welcome Dr. Keith Marshall to the City of Glenarden Mayoral Community Forum on Trust. Dr. Marshall, welcome, sir.
Thank you, and God bless you. I truly appreciate having a voice to say anything in my life that could inspire another human being. And I would like to, anybody who is listening or watching right now, I also like to thank you for your time, because I know my story is God's glory, and I know that there was a purpose and a reason that I'm alive, and it's bigger than me, and it was never about me, even when I thought it was all about me. I was a legend in my own mind at one point in my life. And God has a way of loving you to allow humility to overcome you when you can't practice that humility on your own. So he did for me what I couldn't do for myself. So I appreciate you, and I think this topic is profound.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marshall. We have several attendees online and more coming in. So I would just ask as you arrive to please mute your mics. And without further ado, Dr. Marshall, your story is so profound. Your bibliography, your novel of your self journey is so filled and littered with ways to not trust anyone. Yeah. Can you talk to us about that beginning journey and how you were able to break free, sir?
Okay, so, one of the things I will say is this, that we can all start somewhere. And just because my journey, I internalized my world the way I did, doesn't mean that everybody will make the same choices or the trajectory in their life will be the same. Everybody has a unique way of internalizing the world when we're young. And as a kid, and trust, the first piece of trust and truth, if you will, comes from the child in that first stage of life, in what they call the trust versus mistrust stage. These are psychosocial stages. And if the environment affirms me as a child, and more importantly, as a child, the only way I can most often in the early years be affirmed is literally through the environment, or what they call our senses, because we can't interpret language at the time. And I could fast forward a little bit. My childhood I was sexually abused as a child. I was also, first of all, let me say this too, that everybody that has in some way I perceived has hurt me in some way, I want everybody to clearly understand that the fundamental principle of forgiveness, I have been blessed to practice it. So when I talk, anybody who has ever hurt me, they have been fully forgiven. They are fully have no rent in my head. And I praise and thank God that whatever they did, whether they meant it or not, it was the thing that pushed me to become the truth that I live in today, to live my authentic self. So I was sexually abused as a kid. I was also physically abused in a traumatic way. I was choked, I was beat. A lot of times, I had a stepfather that I think he had his own trauma in his own life. And a lot of times we can pass these things on. So let's just simply say in the stages where I had to be industrious, you have the ideal of being industrious versus inferior. I was a child walking around with an internal narrative that I wasn't good enough. That, we learn to put on these masks as I've been able to decipher my truth later on, of course, going through school and through some intense introspective work that does take a lot of courage to do, because the easiest thing is to not look at self and to continue to blame. My story is not about blame. My story is about taking responsibility and accountability for my life when I became aware that I had the power to do that. And so as a child, I was very lonely. I was an approval seeker, a people pleaser. And all this approval seeking and people pleasing and this narrative that I guess I learned, if you will, and through my ability to adapt to my environment in the unique way I did, gave me this inferiority complex even before I got into what they call high school. When you're in those, or anywhere between the ages of 11 and 18, we are in this period of where they call role identity versus role confusion. And what I mean is that if you look in our inner cities now, and a lot of our youth, when there's not fathers in the home, or even when there are fathers in the home who don't have their own coping skills that they can transmit to the children to teach them what no means and how to literally practice acceptance, if you will, in life. There was no one in my life around that time because of the traumatic world I think that my mother was going through, and the abuses that she was experiencing while she was trying to champion her cause to become a nurse. By the grace of God, she was a nurse for, she still lived 45 years. She instilled some really hard work things in me because I watched her go through her abuses too, while afraid of the man who was abusing her, but also abusing and choking me out every day. And so when I got to about 11 and 12 years old, I had ideas and thoughts running through my head as a child. First of all, people need to understand that when kids are sexually abused, we have natural instincts for survival and natural instincts to feel the sensory. So when a child is 6 or 7 like me was being abused, and I mean abused where I'm having erections and I'm feeling things that my body isn't supposed to feel, I'm trying to interpret things that don't make sense to a kid at that age. It became an antecedent, if you will, a beginning of how I started to learn about women, about men, about myself. And so I was a very confused child. And for some reason, my mother put us in Catholic school and she sent us to Catholic church. I'm not Catholic today. I have nothing against Catholicism. So if you're there and you're Catholic, it's not a bashing Catholic. It's just I'm not Catholic. I have a relationship with Christ today, and I'm never going to apologize about that. But that came along the line. The reality of it is that she would send us to school, send us to church. I would hear things there. I would come home. I would see things there. And it was a confusing world. And then I was afraid. So I had no buffers, if you will, to help me to see truth and reality in that sense of the world that I was living in. And then I'm experiencing some behind the scenes stuff with my babysitter. After watching my mother and father a few times, I walked in on them and then they would explain to birds and the bees to a kid that's 7, 8 years old and don't even know that what you're talking about, someone was doing this to me the whole time. And so now I'm afraid because my religious teaching, if you will, no buffer as a child, telling me I'm going to hell. I'm looking at priests and nuns as they're the second coming of, I guess, God, not interpreting that they're just a human being. They're just like me and they're broken to some degree. So I'm a kid that's confused. I'm lost. I'm hurting. I'm afraid. This is my psychic journey. And so when I get to this age of around 11 and 12, when we can start to reason a little bit more and put in context, if you will, our outer environment, I already have a narrative going on in my head. Most of these narratives are subconscious. And that's why this ideal of truth, the most important truth is when I can live the authentic self. But there was no way I could pull that off at the time. So remember, I'm talking in hindsight that when I go back and decipher my life, my book talks about the psychological journey and the human developmental journey that we can all take and have various ways of interpreting the world. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people here that didn't get high that still felt not good enough, that felt that they needed everybody's approval. Is my hair good enough? Is my face good enough? Is my butt too big? Is my butt too small? All these not good enoughs. Then whenever we are interacting in the world with these narratives that are always most often subconscious, we have natural tendencies to compensate for them in ways to mitigate the stress, if you will, or the restless and irritability and discontentment that goes along with feeling inadequate or not good enough or inferior. So I had a very powerful inferiority complex. But when I got in high school, I could run. And so because I could run and I could play a little bit of football, and it's not for the sake of playing football. I played football. I think it's because I was more mean and nasty because I didn't like how I was feeling. So a lot of them interpret as me being a fierce football player when I was just an angry kid and I had a way to get that anger out. But because I could run and my brother could run, that role identity versus role confusion stage wasn't as profound, if you will, in my thinking, because there was a lot of distractions. Me and my brother were very popular in high school. We were just there's a lot of distractions that really, fed my false ego. That one that says, don't you know who I think I am? And so I was operating off of that. And at the same time, the girls and the promiscuous behavior, remember, don't judge me. I was very promiscuous. I had girls feeding my ego. My ego had an ego. And then I was a runner, and I thought I was a fairly decent looking guy at the time. And so these distractions kept some of that pressure, if you will. But anytime I was alone or anytime I went somewhere, I always didn't feel good enough. And so we were drinking a little bit of beer, experimenting with a little Colt 45, a little bit of marijuana at the time. It mitigated some of the stresses, but it didn't pull me into some crazy addiction. I was just a teen living in the ghetto, gangs around me. I was involved in some of it. So kind of wanted to be in a gang. And then I had the sports, and the sports pulled on me stronger. I had no father pushing me, although there was a stepdad who pretty much checked out. My father wasn't there often. And I understand the power of that. And see, it's just not having a father in the home that I've been able to make the amends with someone. When you hear this journey in a few minutes, where I disrupted some of those relationships, it's not just having a father in a home that's important. It's having a father in a home that understands his truth, his self, his role in life, where he is, so that he can also intentionally help and shape that young man, even that young woman, to see what it means to look after a woman or be a man, if you will. So I didn't really have that. No excuses here. These are just realities that I've been able to decipher through. And so when I got in my senior year in high school, I had good grades all through high school. And most often, and believe it or not, my good grades came because it seemed like the girls were always interested in the guys that would be standing outside the homeroom. They had good grades and they were athletes. So I started getting good grades because I wanted the attention. So my ego worked for me. That false ego. It was really powerful, but I got good grades, and it must have been in me anyway, because my mother, I watched her. She's just like a tiger, man, going through her abuses to finally get to her degree when we were near the end of high school, and became this registered nurse and started doing her thing. But at this point in time, I broke my leg. I broke 3 bones in my leg. I had NFL dreams, but I had no one around me to foster. Look, right now, I am a very muscular man. I'm in really good shape. I was a trainer for many years before I was becoming a doctor. And I had everything in me, I know, to do it, but I didn't have anyone around to foster that environment for me to keep going, because I was also being pulled by the ghetto, the project, all that stuff that was going on around me. And so I get out of high school. I could not mentally focus on sports anymore, because when I broke my leg, it was traumatic for me. And so I went to Temple University. Yeah, I got accepted to Temple University, and I went to Temple University in my first semester. And then I started doing something, just simply messing around with my friend. And we were in a nightclub, which we didn't belong in, at around the age of 18. Remember now, I was a legend in my own mind. I literally was looking to be validated, and I had girls all around me all the time. And so I just, I was trying to do things that I couldn't, put on a mask all the time. I was just a fake, a phony, and a fraud, not because I was a bad guy. I didn't know that I didn't know how hurting I was. I didn't know at the time that I didn't know that I was operating off of false narratives and mistruths. And because anytime you need approval and seek approval and need validation, the narrative isn't truthful, because God made us all who we are, so that we can be who we are, when we are, where we are, who we are at all times. That's called the authentic self. That means that I don't have to put on a facade. I don't have to be somebody that I think you want me to be, or that I think I need to be, in order to get you to approve me. Those things were not relevant to me at the time. It was called survival. We have social instincts. And what does that mean? Our instincts to connect are strong. But then we also have instincts for emotional security and connecting. So if I'm emotionally insecure because of false truths about who I am, subconscious, meaning that they're driving me, they're driving how I feel, and I'm not even aware of it. And a lot of people are on here right now know exactly what, I don't care if you never touched a drug in your life, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so I'm trying to be or live up to something in my head, and then propaganda, media, and everything else wrong is telling me that I can't be. Hard. And so I'm trying this drug. I go in a nightclub. I'm in there, I'm shy. I think I'm a legend in my mind, but in reality, I'm a scared guy. And then when you get to the age of 18, you're either in what they call a nice stage, where you have the independent mind and emotional stability to be what they call intimate with other human beings. There are many of us in relationships right now who are alone. There are many of us in relationships right now, married years, and still are afraid to reveal that authentic self. So the level of intimacy versus isolation is profound, or between ages of 13 and 36, because the true self can't emerge until you have the ability to be vulnerable when you can be vulnerable, because you shouldn't be vulnerable with everybody, because some people are still working off of strong false narratives and ego and things like that, money and power and prestige. And, don't you know who you think I am? But in reality, hiding behind a lot of this stuff, as I wasn't, not a lot of money, but hiding behind things. So I was literally a grown man that was very in isolation, meaning I could be in a room full of people, but very scared, feeling very inferior and very unwanted and desired, although that was my narrative. So I went in the bathroom with my friend. I tried some cocaine. And like anybody, I was just experimenting. Not everybody experiments. So I don't mean it to be a big and ambiguous term. But I was one of those kids. I experimented. He gave me some cocaine. I thought it was the white rich man's high. And here I am, a guy just coming out of the ghetto, because my mom did kind of move us out at the end of that teen year. And it gave me some power. And I'm like, what? I walked out the bathroom, and I was in every girl's face throughout the club. I didn't know what happened, but now, and when I looked at it through the biogenetic and scientific eye that I know now, that there was some real neurobiological change that took place in my brain. Everybody doesn't become addicted when they try a drug. And some people have a genetic predisposition to become addicted, and it sets off that expression. And for some reason, my brain encoded these messages and that influx of dopamine and things. And these are the science part of giving me. I wouldn't know that then. But the reality of it is the drugs mitigated something that I couldn't do for myself. It gave me a false sense of power. So it removed the fear. It removed the ambiguity. It removed the ambivalence. It removed the uncertainty that I had about even who I was, so that I could connect with people. And just so I'm all around the club talking to people. So next week I tell my friend, hey, let's get a little bit more of that stuff and let's go out. And before you know it, I'm about 6 months into school, and I'm in my sociology class, and I can remember having drugs in the car, and I was feeling very inadequate in the back of the class. And I walked out, I took a hit of cocaine, and I never went back. So here I am now, 19. I got the gift of gab. So I literally was getting these different jobs, housekeeper, and become a housekeeper supervisor, on and on. So I'm literally trying to mitigate this. And at the same time, I'm having children out of wedlock. And don't you judge me. If you do, judge David. If you do, judge Paul. They were murderers, and some of them. So a lot of people really kill me when they put the judgment rule on you, and then the Creator will put the Bible right in front of you and show you stories of brokenness that are like much more complex and profound. But we can give that. He didn't, nothing new under the sun. What I'm saying is, I was a lost man, young boy, actually, in my mind. I was not emotionally independent. I was not mentally secure, and I was a very insecure man. And so the drugs started to rule my life. They started to take over. And just so to sum it up quickly, because I don't want to take up the whole time. The drugs led me on a journey in the era where crack started to like literally hit the atmosphere and take over our inner city. That's why I know God empowered me to be able to go into inner cities. I don't care if you're from a gang, I've been in that life too. And talk to all of you to let you know I understand you, how it feels to be scared, broken. And I know you put the guy that I was in jail one time talking to these prisoners about how much fear is going on. They put their chests out. I'm not talking about that kind of fear. The fear of living with myself, the fear of not taking responsibility to practice discipline and take the long route, hard route to become who I aspire to be, as opposed to committing crimes, which people think is, it don't take courage to do that. It takes fear to do that. And it takes courage to live and execute around principle. It takes courage to look at myself and understand when I need to say I'm sorry. It takes courage to own my part in the mess in my life, even if I was hurt as a kid, knowing that if mom hurt me, if dad hurt me, if the babysitters hurt me, if the people abuse me, there's nothing I can do about it now, but there is something I can do with my life now. And I can choose to forgive, which doesn't, it's not precipitated by my feeling. It's simply what it is, a principle. And so addiction led me to force me to look at these things. So I went in over 25 drug treatment programs along the way. I got shot in the head along the way. And the book will describe some stuff that are going to blow you away in terms of the spiritual stuff that happened, the voices in my ear that saved me and saved my life, the whispers that saved my life. And I don't want to get into it here, just to give you an overview. Crack cocaine. I would beg God with everything in me, to the point where I would sweat, and to relieve me of this obsession. To no avail, I'm smoking. Again, I had one person tell me, I said I would smoke, and then in between hits, I would pray, "You heathen, you sinner." I said, "You're right, I'm a sinner. And I would rather take a hit and pray for grace and get me off of it than not to." So what are you saying? Is that he not big enough to be bigger than my problem? These are the kind of things I would hear while I was begging and trying my best to get off of this drug. And so it led me to dark places, being shot in the head, stabbed multiple times in a knife fight that's nothing but a Tyler Perry movie. And I hope he reads the book, because he'll want to put it on. Beat down with baseball bats, run down by cars, spit on by gangbangers, and humiliated in front of people because they said I was light-skinned, or I thought I was this. And here I am, I was a crackhead who couldn't stop. And then, of course, I'm meeting women, and I'm having some babies. And by the grace of God, my journey led out to fix those relationships, fix anything I owed in child support. That's why another man, if a man or woman is on here and people are not taking responsibility, there's no excuse to not make it right in your life. And so through all that, and then I end up meeting my wife in California, because my first ex, we weren't really, I wouldn't even consider married, but we got married, and then within a month or two, we were annulled. I came to California in rehab, and I knew I had burnt bridges in Philadelphia, so I ended up staying out here. And this is where I was behind dumpsters often, because I would sell the shoes on my feet for a hit of cocaine. Now, guys, I did not grow up that. My grandfather's sergeant police, 35 years. My brother is a state corrections and now Homeland Security, 30 years. My other brother is a firefighter. What happened to me? I just told you I went to Temple. I made a mistake. I made some young, stupid, gullible mistakes to try and experiment, not knowing I was going to fall in the pit. And as a result, it led me to these dark places. And so when I finally surrendered, it's ironic how I went in all the treatment centers, in and out of jail, in and out of psychiatric centers, anything I could do to break the addiction. Something powerful happened to me that gave me the understanding of the word surrender. I'm in my bed one night. I got a pipe in my mouth, guys. I've been in all these treatment centers, and my wife we were married at the time, and she put up with 9 years of the 23 years because I met her in my addiction and tried to fool her, and God put her in my life for a reason. We've been together now 29 years, so he did something right, and she's gorgeous. And the reality of it, I'm grateful to have her and as an angel in my life. So she's in the other room. I'm smoking the pipe in the middle of the night. I'm seeing all these demons. People would have said, "Oh, he's just hallucinating fool." No, I know what it's like to hallucinate. I used to cut the couch up, running out of the house naked. I mean, crazy stuff, hallucinating. So I know that what I was seeing was powerful. And I was so afraid to get out of the bed, but I said I needed to hit the floor. And I just, God, I need you to forgive me, because I know I'm going to die. I just feel I'm going to die that night. So I just mustered up, I guess, whatever faith I could. And I hit the floor, but believing I was going to die. But I hit the floor anyway. And in the midst of that, I begged out and I cried out to God to please free me or kill me. And I prayed that prayer because at that point, I knew in my mind, there was no more debating with God. Just take a little bit of this and give me this, give me that. And something miraculous happened. This is just my truth. I fell asleep. When I woke up the next morning, I went in the bathroom. I had more crack and I had a lot for that day. Something was different. I took it and I flushed it. I took the pipe and I flushed it. And I went in there and I told my wife something that I had told her millions of times. "Sweetheart, I am sorry. Tomorrow," it was on April 16th. I remember it. "I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get my life together." And she made me something to eat and I went to sleep. I got up the next day, Bodies in Motion, the name of the gym. Look, I can be researched, so ain't no drama with me. I got a job, and the first week I got my paycheck, I couldn't understand why I didn't want to get high. So I started thinking about it because that's what I was naturally doing. Nothing happened, just it was there. So I said, wow, this is crazy. And so 2 weeks later, I get another check. Don't want to get high no more. And before you know it, in 3 months, I was their #1 trainee, selling over 10,000 a month in personal training. In 6 months, I was starting my own business called A New You Professional Training. Within that year, I paid off all my debts. I paid back I was making 6-figure money. I paid all my child support money. I made amends to everybody, but I also had enough sense to know that I needed to get other men in my life that could help me, because I knew the obsession was gone. So this story is for anybody who's dealing with any traumatic situations, anybody who is dealing with any restlessness and irritability and discontentment based on some things in your life that you have no power over. And that could be your spouse or other people or something going on. The ideal of surrender, the concept of surrender, has to be rooted in any decision you make, so that you can practice the acceptance to need to walk in your truth. And my truth at the time was, I knew that if I didn't make a paradigm shift, that no matter how much I didn't get high, there was nothing going to change in my life. So I allowed men for the first time that I knew that I had thought they had my best interests in mind, because they would tell me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. And for some reason, I just wanted the guidance as a man in his upper 30s. I wanted the guidance at that time in my life. And I started to take it. And before you know it, looking at myself, although it was very scary to say, hey, I need to forgive these people, I need to do this and I need to do that, I was intentional to never want to go back to where I came. Living behind a dumpster, guys, let me tell you something. Smoking dope behind a dumpster, sometimes when you end up there, that was just his choice. He was just weak. You know, you can say what you want. I am a doctor today, and I'll get there. I didn't want to be where I was. I was ashamed. My shoes weren't on my feet. I sold them for a hit of crack. And I'm begging God in the middle of a sunny, hot, screaming hot day to please take this thing off of me. And the point I want to make is, when I surrendered, I totally understand what surrender means. And this is what I'm going to do with your theme. When you can practice, when you can surrender, you understand. And I don't care how much money, you could be LeBron James on here with all the money in the world and think you got power over somebody. No, you got influence. And the ideal of power is really the power that I have to accept my powerlessness over things I can't control. And when I could practice acceptance and I could surrender and know what I have no power to control, then I start living in truth, which gives me trust in myself, because I don't have to try to make something happen. And in reality, I can't. We can use money to get people to do stuff, but in reality, people can say no. Yes, their no means I might not get it, but don't be delusional to think you really got power outside of who you are. You have influence, your money gives you muscle, but it's only based on what the other person needs. My true power comes from when I know how to surrender, accept my powerlessness, know who's powerful, know who's running everything, and it ain't me. Then I find my peace. Then I don't need to prove nothing to you. So I know that surrender is the essence of me being able to live out my truth, because then now I know what I control and I can't. So when I surrendered, I started to allow these men to help me. And long story short, when somebody prompted me, because I would get up every day, I was so grateful to not do drugs anymore. I would go to the shelters. I would go to the prisons. I would go places that I had been. I've been in jail. I've been locked up. And I would speak, and I found my joy and my power in my story. So my pain pushed me to my purpose, which is God's plan. My pain pushed me to my purpose. And what was my purpose? He said, go back to school. I said, man, what am I going to do going back to school at 39 years old? Man, what am I going to do? He said, go be a drug and alcohol counselor. And I said, well, you know, I smoked enough dope. Maybe I could do that. It wasn't funny at the time I was scared. So I went in, I got my first A at Glendale College, and you would have thought I was jumping for joy. I was happy. Yo, I did this. They tested me in, they accepted those units I had at Temple. And I said, wow, after all those years of that, I was able to get in with my English scores. And so it empowered me to want more. So I graduated top of my class at Glendale. And I'm working as a personal trainer, taking care of business now, paying the bills. Wifey, know I got everything under lock now. I'm making up for everything. I'm helping my kids now, even my grown kids, investing in their futures and their education. By the way, I have 14 children, 10 sons, 21 college degrees amongst us all. MIT, Temple, Chicago School of Psychology, Westchester State, University of Irvine. My youngest daughter is 19. She's upstairs right now. She's going to be a pediatric surgery. She's at UC, University of California, Irvine. What I'm saying is my purpose that God had for me also influenced much of that. And I appreciate God because they know that they come to me. When you come to me with a problem, please bring me what you think your solution is, because we ain't gonna wallow in no mess. We're gonna find a way out and we're gonna keep it going forward. So I went to Pacific Oaks College after that. I got my bachelor's degree in human development, and I loved human development because it really helped me to understand, like, what the heck happened to me? Why was I such a fool? Why was I acting why did I think these things about myself? So school became fascinating to me. That's why I truly believe. And also, let me tell you something, guys. I was a 39-year-old man with a book bag on my back. I said, yeah, I got a purpose today. I mean something. So what happened? This is why education is powerful and meaningful. You ain't talking about someone, you know, mom said you could need to go to school. Let me tell you, a man that was 39 years old, feeling like a kid going to school, it gave me a sense of empowerment. But because I was so focused, not only did it give me a sense of empowerment, it opened up my cultural box, that lens that I see life through, and gave me open-mindedness to see other things, to learn about other people, to learn other things about life that helped me challenge the limited thinking that I had. And I still, to some degree, have limited thinking because we're all going to grow. So I got my bachelor's degree in human development with a specialization in early childhood education. Remember that child that was getting abused as a sex kid, you know, as a kid being used as an object? It started to make sense why I started to feel the way I felt about myself. And then I'm getting my graduation. I figured I'm a trainer. I got money now. I'm doing everything. I don't need no more education. But then my ego worked for me again. I'm on stage and I see these people with these sashes around them. I said, well, what does that mean? Oh, they're master graduate students. And I said, well, I want one of those just to get the gown. So I'll go and get my master's degree in human development. I was afraid to go for a doctorate degree because they said you had to do a dissertation. I looked at the stats. In 2000, for example, 2015, only 1,944 African-American people had a doctorate degree of 41 million African-Americans. And of the 300 million Americans, we weren't even a percentage point. So I knew the odds. There's no way. I'm not going to write no this. I'm not going to do a research. Who's going to? I was scared to do it. And because I was scared, I did it. And what do you mean?
Somebody said, I have a question.
Yes. You got to unblock your mic. You have to unblock your mic. I didn't hear you.
So our topic is truth. And so far, everything, Dr. Marshall, that I've heard you say has been true. And that's really wonderful. So I want to hand it back over to Mayor Cross, because I think she is going to add something to that.
Okay. I just had about 3 minutes, but okay. Mm-hmm.
No, thank you so much. Dr. Marshall, I'm going to tell you, you have a phenomenal story. And if we look at our topic of trust, you've gone through the entire gamut of life in just literally the last 30 minutes. It's just interesting, that power that you have. We talked to defining and exploring this concept of trust. You know, I wanted to kind of get in there, Doctor, because as we go through, we want to make sure that we are aligning with, you know, an understanding. Your story really does tackle the most complex societal issues that any one of us may have experienced. Not the gamut that you've experienced. So I thank you, Dr. Crossland. You got to let us get in there and kind of digest what you're telling us, because we're walking a journey with you that I've never lived. we do have some attendees here. I want to give them an opportunity to ask questions too.
Okay.
So we
Okay.
only have about 20 minutes now.
All right.
So
Okay.
that's why I wanted to kind of get in there, Doctor.
I'm sorry. It's just I get in. I know. I'm
you
sorry,
get in
guys.
there.
But God
But
is in
it's
charge. I
okay.
didn't mean to. Okay, let's go.
No, and that's why I let you flow. And because what I want to make sure that we get after in this trust is that through your story, you have defined it, you've explored it, this whole concept of trust, from trusting your own abilities as an athlete, from trusting your own ego, you know, from trusting what you thought happened to you was something that was an accepted behavior, which was, you know, essentially you were raped. You were a young kid.
Yeah, I was raped. I was raped.
So,
Yes.
so accepting that, you know, those are areas that you trusted. And then having even walking in on your parents and in the midst of where they were, explaining to you, well, this is natural, this is okay. And at a 7-year-old, that is a very skewed level of trust. The protection that should be there wasn't. And unfortunately, it takes us into an understanding that that is a huge societal problem. And particularly in our communities, it's not spoken of. It's hushed because of the embarrassment to the parents, and an embarrassment to the child, and a stigmata of sorts.
Right.
One of the things that I also wanted to make sure that we got to, Doctor, is this care and reliability. Care is the assessment that you have over someone else's interests. Now, you took us on this journey briefly with your wife. You know, you cared about her interests, but you trusted in the emotional impact that the cocaine was giving you, the empowerment that it gave you, the larger than life feeling that it gave you. So you took a different version of trust each time, from the cocaine to your wife. You loved them both, but no man can love two masters.
No.
One of the things that I also wanted to make sure that we talk to is the sincerity and the competence. And you talked to this doctor with saying, I had many times I told her we were going to get over this. We were going to move past this. And yet we would go back. And it wasn't until you put your trust in something bigger than you. And this is very important that we all understand this. Put your trust in something bigger than you. You know, there's a song that says, I like to stand by the ocean because you don't see the beginning and the ending. You may see the beginning, but you don't see the end of the ocean. It's bigger than us.
Yes.
What you put your trust in at that time, you didn't quite understand growing up in Catholicism and then converting into, you know, self-ideologies, and then coming back to the Catholicism, which brings us to a foundation.
But I'm not just so you know, I'm not a Catholic. I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. I believe in Christ. I have a relationship. I'm not into religion.
Exactly. But you trust in a process.
At the time,
trusted in a process. Everything you've talked about has been process and process. Little small segments of our lives develop into other segments of our lives. And one of the key pieces when we look at, I mean what I say and I say what I mean, and we need to act accordingly. You know, when you talk about trust and how you went through the various facets of your life, that's why I wanted you to continue, because you kind of gave us the whole complex story. Every piece and facet in your life, I believe you meant what you said.
Yes.
I believe it because you did it.
Right.
One of the things that is so critical that we need to understand clearly is that I know I can do this. And that's where you left us. You made us understand that everything that you go through is a journey and a challenge to take you to your destiny.
Yes.
And now you can say, I know I can do this. I see them with a shawl. What is that? I want that hood. And you went after it.
Yes.
I see them because I'm not anxious to display my knowledge in as much as I am learning to do what I know.
Yes.
And I love that about your story. Now, before we go too far, I want you to talk to us about one last piece, because like I said, you went through all of what I thought we could discuss. Your story is just, again, God bless you. And I'm a believer as well. The journey you've been on is one that has some structural integrities to it, but I want you to confront distrust. How do you confront this distrust?
Well, the first thing is that, remember, I started out with the authentic self. You know, unfortunately, most people, and I don't, maybe I didn't do a poll on this, so I'm not gonna say more, but more important, the complex situation we have here is I believe that people will not change in proportion to a consequence or actions that will start to make them want and desire that. So in order for me to really learn how to trust, there has to be, I believe, things going on in my life where I know that if I don't employ the trust, if I don't allow others to help me, like guide and direct me, I'm going to be stagnant, if you will, in life. And so I think that everybody should assess where are they at in their life. What is it that you're uncomfortable with? What is it about your life that you look at others and you covet? What is it about your life that you look at others and you become envious of? What is it about your life that you feel limited and that fear is dominating your decision, which means you're probably not making any decision? The only way to discover that is to have courage to look at why is it that I don't want to make moves in my life that may cost me time, money, discipline, give up friends, give up relationships that probably ain't the most productive for me anyway. Because until I don't know if I can trust until I learn why I don't even just trust myself. Because if fear is dominating my decisions, how can I trust anybody if I can't fundamentally find trust within? And you can't find trust within if fear is inhibiting your growth in any area of your life. I'm not saying we're going to all be always fearless. We're going to face it. I have a phrase at the end of my book. It says, let fear be what it is. Because listen, guys, every one of you on this platform, anywhere in the world, we experience this thing of fears all around us, and it comes in so many forms. But does it dominate how you move? Does it dominate what you do? And the only way to know that is that you have to have the ability, as what I call it, to introspect with the help of another person, because it's easy for us to garble our truth, to stay in denial in some way or form, so that we don't have to go forward. We justify why we don't want to make changes. So the answer, briefly, in order for me to even know what trust is, I have to decipher my own truth, even if they hurt. I'm a people pleaser. I'm an approval seeker. I suffer from envy, or I suffer from jealousy. I don't think I'm good at it. We have to be able to look at ourselves. Michael Jackson says when he said, the man in the mirror, if you want to make a change in your life, be the change you want, look at yourself. See, those words they are so beautiful, but they are very profound, because it takes a lot of courage. My journey forced me to practice that courage, not that I was so courageous. I was empowered to practice the courage I needed to start with the answer. The answer and the solution was in the same place, me, where I sit. And I knew that I was my worst enemy. I was a victim, if you will, to my own feelings, not recognizing that my subconscious and conscious thinking literally drove everything that I did. And it was very faulty and distorted. Sometimes we definitely need people to help us. So yeah, it's a lot more I can say about this, but I think that's fundamental. You have to look at why it is that you're afraid to trust, because it's not the thing that you're trying to trust. It's you're not having the trust in yourself for some reason. And usually fear is always literally living on the same street with any negative emotion that you have, if it's not always actually the root of it all.
Wow. Wow, doctor. So as you were speaking, what came forward was distrust is a choice. Distrust is a choice that makes you yourself vulnerable to another person's actions.
Right.
So when you are fearful, when you're distrusting, you are literally relinquishing self-control and giving it to that person that you distrust. And it is in general an assessment of sorts of something of value. Either you are not safe with yourself, or you feel like like you've talked to us before, are more educated, more profound, or more dedicated, or more determined. And so this is the situation that you then put yourself in to engage in strategies to protect yourself. You literally give yourself over to someone else's definition.
Yes. And remember,
So
Mayor, some
profound.
people can still live in fear behind degrees and money too. See, because that doesn't define the truth. The truth is, can I just simply be myself in all disturbances that are going on in life, but all the external factors? Can I just, when I say no, can I just mean it from an authentic place, as not a mean place, or not any hint of what they call of manipulating the world around me? Can I just be my authentic self? Now, understand something. You could have 50 PhDs, doesn't mean you have totally self-actualized. You can measure as self-actualization, also true too, by the amount of restlessness, irritability, and discontentment that anyone exhibits at any time in their life. Because I can promise you this: if you are restless, irritable, and discontent, and I don't care how you justify it, you are walking in a mistruth. There's a trust that is being disrupted in the creator who is running everything anyway, and you can't accept it. That's why you're restless, irritable, and discontent, if you are. And we all are at some degree, but I just choose not to stay in it no more. And that whole thing about victim, I'm not a victim. I don't give a darn about systemic racism. I don't give a darn how bad the community is. I don't have to have the front of my, I could live, if somebody could live in the projects and can have enough love for themselves to have dignity and to keep the front of their house clean and demand that you don't bring your trash and your dirt around me. In other words, mistrust and fear and being a victim is a choice.
Fantastic. Thank you, Doctor. So I've got a couple of hands up. We've got a few minutes left. I want to make sure we can get some questions in. Okay, Mr. Powell Allen, please unmute yourself.
Hey, Mayor, Dr. Martin, I had a simple questions to ask is, because I heard you say about your childhood and you being raped. How did you overcome that? And then why did you overcome it?
You ready for the answer? Hope you can handle it. You ready? I forgave
I
them.
can ask.
I forgave them. And I made a choice to forgive them. And I recognize that it is a choice. You know why? Because principles like truth, honesty, justice, they're all principles that are lost. I mean, if you practice them, they work the way they're supposed to work. I realized that when I forgave, it freed me from them. That's God's business now. He allowed it to happen, right? So was it supposed to destroy me? Remember Jacob got thrown in the pit? David was chopping people. He was getting somebody's girl and putting her on, you know what I mean? I'm trying to be colloquial with it, but putting somebody on the front line so he can get his girl. I mean, these are all today's terms. How did you got to forgive yourself and you got to forgive the perpetrator. There's no other way out. The only way out is go in, look at why I don't want to forgive, and remember that I didn't make me. I'm expected to forgive. I'm not asking for my feelings about it, and forgive and move on. Yes, it's hard sometimes. I get it. There are profound levels in this. But at the end of the day, it's forgiveness that frees you, my friend.
Well, accept that answer. Thank you.
For that. Thank you. So next we have Ms. Shersley. Please unmute yourself. Thank you for that question, Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Mayor, for having me.
Hi, sorry. My question was, how did you find your strength? You know, a lot of people who go through addiction, they end up like relapsing. So how did you find your strength to continue and to go forward?
Well, I don't know if it's so much how did I find it as opposed to I was pushed. Remember, I said my pain pushed me to my purpose. And what I mean is that I surrendered is how I found my strength. Remember, there were still things in my environment and people that I didn't know. I have my uncle, my uncle he also is a doctor of psychology. He might even be on here watching. His grandson is the Heisman Trophy winner. I mean, like there's a lot of people around me that did great things. So there was some things that I also had to draw from. And I recognized, you know what? I'm gonna be honest with you. I never wanted to be a drug addict. I didn't want to be messed up on drugs. And when I told people I wanted to get off, I did, but I surrendered. I surrendered and I wanted something different for my life. So surrender is a decision too. Now, maybe, remember, I did it for 23 years. So, sometimes they got, why it takes so long? But I was hard-headed. I was prideful. I was fearful. I was egotistical. And I was also very afraid. So I surrendered. It takes surrender. I know what that means. People can define it, but can people actually live it? When you live in that place of surrender, you accept your role in life. You accept what God has for you, and you know what he doesn't want for you, and you know what you can control. And you cannot control what people think or feel. No one can. We're delusional to think we can. We can't. And I found that out in my surrender, that all I could do was work on me. That was it. And I wanted something better in my life. So I finally got tired of being tired, and I threw my hands up. And maybe I believe at that moment, instead of petitioning for this and that, I was too afraid to kill myself. I had no option. So I surrendered. And you know what helped me to do that? It was called eating the humble pie. So those consequences of the dumpster had to happen. God loved me. So why did he love you? Let me sleep behind a dumpster. He loved me more than you could ever think. So he let me stay back there. He let me get shot in the head, and he let me get stabbed and said, the devil, you're a lie. You ain't taking me out of here. But there was a reason. I surrendered. Surrender. Stop trying to control what you have no control of.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Marshall, you actually talked to us earlier about Hebrews 11:1. You said, now, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So you looked at a not seen and you gave it a choice. You recognized something bigger than you, and you said, you can heal me, free me, or you can kill me.
That's right.
You gave it two choices. So you surrendered to two choices, and you were comfortable to trust either one of them.
That's right.
So it was
you got it. I don't know how you got that, but you got it. God is, yeah, you got that, man. Somebody ever told me that, because people don't understand. In that moment in my life, there was no more other. If you don't kill me, God, then you better free me, because you already know I'm a punk. I couldn't kill myself. Excuse the language, but I couldn't kill myself. I ain't had the courage to do that. So take me out the game now, or free me. Come on, you the man. So you're right. Thank you for that, because that's the surrender piece. Hope
really
for hope. I said, look, if you got to be real, because you're the only one that can do this for me. And if you're not, then take me out, because it's over. I know, you know what I mean? So yeah, I appreciate that. First time somebody really hit me in the heart. That was cool that you could understand that moment from me.
We've got a question from Mr. Mincy. Please unmute yourself.
How are y'all doing today? My question for you, Dr. Marshall, is when you made the decision to go to school and further your education, how old were you when you did that?
39. I graduated 39. With 4.0 GPA, 9.5 years. My wife was smiling up there. Yeah, your degree too, babe, because she helped me study day and night. And when I was studying up 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, let me tell you something, my friend. You know the word gangster, that was it. I was done with the drama. When I went back to school, I went good schools too. I went in hard. And if you had negativity or distractions, you was behind me in the rearview mirror. I had already blew enough life. And I just focused, and I realized that the brain and the mind is a fascinating thing if you just simply focus. And I don't even know what a B is in college. I got 4.0, and I went to good schools. And I appreciate the education, guys. So it's not about being pretentious or, hey, look at me with a doctorate. No, it's like, what? God, look how, man, you deep. You can give somebody this kind of strength, because it ain't my strength. I know it. It ain't corny. If you don't believe me, that's on you. I couldn't believe it. I still know that degree on the wall is God's degree, not mine. He just let me use it, you know, because we human. But man, oh man, I just focused, my brother. I realized that it takes just as much focus to go back to school and really want to learn and develop and be somebody in this world as opposed to some athlete who making jumping 10 feet tall and been given that gift, and he goes to the heights in life. I've got my NFL and my NFL dreams and my doctorate degree. That, look at that ring. They bought that for me. That looked like a Super Bowl ring. Has 9 years diamonds on it because it says it was 9 years that my life and my wife too invested in my, and she went back to school and got her degree too. So we got some equally yoked stuff going on here. And she went back to school at 40. She's 9 years younger than me. I'm 59. But a grace God don't look it because she take care of me. So we good.
Doctor, I'm going to tell you something, and I'm going to blow your mind again. You have 9 years, 9 diamonds. Your wife is a virtuous woman, the crown to you. And your 9 is the number of completion.
Wow. Wow.
That's what that is.
Wow.
I want to go to Dr. Crossland. I see your hand up. Thank you, Mr. Mincy.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, Mayor. Thanks for acknowledging me. I just want to say I've been knowing Dr. Marshall for several years now. He has the finest cars, the finest house, the finest facilities at the treatment center. He has the pool. And so you all please get his book. There she is. Hi, Miss Lily, my girlfriend. And she is so beautiful. And he has the most beautiful family and children. So Dr. Marshall, my question for you is, so how do we keep our temples clean? In our environments, because even, I'm a church lady, and sometimes church can be a little toxic. A little bit of catty jealousy, a little bit of gossip, a little bit of haters. And I thank God, I'm not one of those. And if I do gossip, I let everybody know, and I do repent right away. Sometimes you have to get it out. So how do we keep our temples clean is my question.
Well, not that I have the answer how you clean your temple, but one of the things that I know, first of all, nothing that I have in material defines me. And listen, guys, I was behind a dumpster for many years. So when people ask me about a car and say, man, I said, dude, if you hear the story behind this, I laugh when I look at the car. God is good. And my car is on. What I'm saying is these things don't, thank God I had what I had before, which was absolutely nothing. So when I got this stuff, I realized, I told my wife the other day, I said, what if God gave me $50 million, what would we do right now? I said, well, only 2 things to do: leave some generational wealth and just bless as many organizations as we can that's helping people. What else I got to do? I'm 59. I'm not running around town. In other words, see, when you're jealous and envious, you're also not living in your truth, because remember, first of all, if you got to walk in whatever your gifts are. If you're walking in your gift, see, I'm walking in my gift right now. I'm having fun right now because this is my life. I don't care what nobody thinks about. So people can misjudge you when they see this material stuff, but then get on the phone with me and talk to you so I can tell you how I got an 800 credit score, but how, I didn't even know what a credit score was. Or when you gave me a check and just told me I could write a check, and nobody ever told me to put money in the bank. That was my thinking many years ago. I give you a check, no problem. They put my face up on Kmart one day. Don't take these parcel checks. Literally, what I'm saying is, when you find yourself envious or jealous or gossiping or whatever, just look to the truth. Why do they matter? Why does it matter what people think? And the reason why I can say that so passionately is because that's all I cared about, is what they think. And now I realize that my freedom is what I think. And more importantly, what does he think about me? So I'm always going to remember, we got blood in the redemption. So I'm always going to be asking God to forgive me for something. If you holy, then vow, and you ain't never done nothing, this ain't probably the broadcast to be on. What I think that you just have to look to yourself. I think that you have to realize that as someday, remember, that's why we can't work, or if you can work your way to heaven, tell me how to do that, because he told me you can't do that. What you have to do is work in agreement, I hope, with the Spirit. And when you feel uncomfortable and you know that, you make the amends and try your best to just make it better. You might have to do that 7 times or 77 times. I don't know. But, ain't no sense for me to covet somebody else and what they got. If I got what I got and I'm grateful, at this point in my life, that doesn't even matter. So yeah, I appreciate, that I have some nice things, but when I finally get some of the comforts of life and don't have no credit card debt and all that, which I don't, I realize that what can I do to help somebody else right now? That's what, to me, is the only thing that really means anything. I want to help my family and whoever else in the world, so I can leave my mark on the world in a positive light.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Dr. Marshall, I'm telling you, this has been very enriching. And I thank you for all of your transparency, for your strength. As you were talking, I just started researching 9. Again, started researching. You are a researcher. I'm a researcher. I'm
Yes.
an analyst from the military life. So when you say something, it makes me research.
Right.
And what I found here is that life path number, 9 is your life's path number. Sometimes the angels cannot intervene, so they give us a hint. Here's your hint. You have embarked on a lifelong quest to quench an insatiable thirst for growth and new experiences. Your number of 9, you found always searching for more experiences, more education, more deep talks, and more of the next adventure. Yes. You have an incredible, multifaceted, versatile person who essentially is living wise beyond your years. And likely due to the fact that there's a culmination of this life and it has come before you. So you are technically an old soul. Some things you don't really know have already been embedded in you because you said it earlier, there's nothing new under the sun.
Right, nothing.
There is a heart of creativity in you, and you love to learn, to grow, and evolve yourself. And ultimately, you are living in alignment with the creative values and the charismatic wisdom to inspire others. Now, I think that just sums you up.
I receive that because if it can help somebody else, man, I could sleep at night because it's not about me. I love it. Appreciate that. I receive it all.
This is a truth find in your life journey. Don't fight the process. Don't fight the process.
Thank you.
Many of us fight the process. And in the process, in the test becomes the testimony. Your testimony has now empowered multiple young folks on this line tonight, and you've empowered and touched me as well.
Thank you so much.
Doctor, I'm going to let you have the last words as we are out of time, but I want to tell you that I am so proud of you, and I'm just my words are just not going to come together for how impressed I am with the journey you've lived through. I can't even put in a fingernail, not even a mustard seed of faith that could possibly have pulled someone through what you've gone through. And though we know that a mustard seed is yet but a pin needle thick.
Wow. Wow.
Doctor, tell us some last words and we'll close out. Everyone, thank you for joining us. And you know my motto, we're going to continue to move the mission forward. So Dr. Marshall, take us home, sir.
If you're lonely, if you don't feel like you're worthy, if you don't feel like you belong here, it's a lie. It really is. I'm going to say I love you. If you haven't heard that word, and I really mean it, because love is not what I feel, it's action. And I want to say something that empowers, influence you. And just remember, let fear be what it is, but don't let fear determine who you are. Meaning, don't allow fear to stop you from being who God intended you to be. It might hurt. It might be scary. It might mean that I have to give up something. But if it's going to push you to your purpose, you might be amazed even halfway through the journey of how good it feels to be walking and doing something that you really want to do in your life. And I want to say God bless you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Trust the process.
Thank you.
This has been a Mayoral Community Forum from the city of Glenarden. We have talked about trust. We have talked about tackling the world's most complex societal issues in one man. And I thank you. Good night.
God bless you. Thank you.